I had waited for that day longer than I cared to admit. My 38th birthday, which, in the grand scheme of things, might not sound like a milestone to most people, but to me, it was everything. I hadn't had a real party since my 20s. Life got in the way, relationships that fizzled, jobs that wore me down, and a general sense that no one really cared to celebrate me the way I used to dream they might. But this year was going to be different. I told myself that over and over again, like a little chant I recited in my head while frosting the cake I made from scratch that morning, while setting up the string lights on the patio, and even while deciding whether to wear the blue dress or the black one. I wore the blue. I wanted to feel bright, important, chosen. I invited everyone weeks in advance. I planned the menu down to the type of olives I put in the damn tapenade. I made sure there were enough chairs for the older folks, a kids' table with coloring books for my cousin's twin boys, and I even paid for a local guitarist to come play soft acoustic covers in the background, because that's what I liked. I wanted the night to feel like mine. Just once. Just this once. It was going well. Better than I'd hoped, honestly. People showed up. They laughed. They said the food was amazing. A few of my friends even told me how relaxed and happy I looked, and I felt it too. I felt like I could finally exhale. And then, just as I was about to cut the cake, I heard the car door slam. Late. Anne. Of course it was Anne. She was wearing one of those floaty maternity dresses that made her look like some ethereal Earth mother, and her long blonde hair was curled in perfect beachy waves that I had once tried to replicate and failed miserably at. She walked in holding a giant silver box wrapped with a blue satin bow. Her husband, well, fiancé, technically, trailed behind her carrying a smaller bag, looking apologetic and a little sweaty. Everyone turned to look. The guitarist even stopped mid-song. She walked right up to me, gave me a breezy kiss on the cheek, and said, "Sorry we're late. Traffic was brutal, and someone here," she rubbed her belly and laughed, "had to pee like every 10 minutes. People chuckled. I chuckled. But my hands tightened slightly around the cake knife. She put the box on the table, the one I had spent hours decorating with those little vintage candle holders I'd bought from that thrift shop up in Vermont. "We brought something fun. Just a little announcement," she said. In that way she had. The way that made everything she did seem like a gift, even when it wasn't. Especially when it wasn't. I didn't know what was happening until she untied the ribbon, lifted the lid, and a cloud of blue confetti exploded upward, raining bits of shredded tissue paper over the candles, the tapenade, my grandmother's antique punch bowl. "It's a boy," she squealed, lifting her arms high like she'd just scored a touchdown. There was a pause. Maybe half a second. Maybe less. But in that moment, I could feel my soul stretch thin, like cling wrap over a steaming bowl. Then came the cheers, loud and unfiltered. Everyone clapped. My aunt started crying. The guitarist picked up his guitar and played something vaguely joyful. I was still holding the cake knife, and turned to me, eyes sparkling. "Hope you don't mind sharing the attention," she said, laughing. "I mean, what better day to tell everyone than your birthday, right?" Right. That's what she said. That's what she always said, in some form or another. Every damn time. I smiled. Because that's what you do, isn't it? You smile when your sister decides your special day is a convenient backdrop for her latest announcement. You smile when your party becomes her press conference. You smile when you realize that you, once again, have become wallpaper in your own life. I cut the cake. I served it. I said congratulations and how exciting, and when's the due date, and you look amazing, like it was a script I'd been handed the second she walked through the door. But inside, something cracked. It wasn't a big, dramatic shatter. It was quiet, precise. A hairline fracture that had been waiting for just the right pressure. The night carried on. People danced. Someone spilled wine on the porch. I thanked the guitarist and packed up leftovers for my neighbors. Then, around 10:30, after the last guest left and the air had that slightly sticky, post-party stillness to it, I sat alone on the patio with a glass of sangria, staring at a pile of blue confetti tangled in the strings of white fairy lights. I picked up the last slice of cake, wrapped it in foil, and placed it carefully in the fridge. Then I walked to my bedroom, took out my laptop, and logged into my travel account for the first time in over 15 years. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, not yet, but I knew what I wasn't going to do anymore. I wasn't going to let her take from me and laugh while doing it. I wasn't going to smile through it like a fool. I was going to do something I hadn't dared in a long, long time. And I was going to start with her favorite thing in the world. It's strange how memories don't just fade with time, but instead settle like silt at the bottom of a murky river, waiting for something to stir the water and bring them back into view, sharp and undeniable. That night on the patio, after Anne's gender reveal confetti had been swept into the corners of my yard like some glittery invasion, the memories started bubbling up, not one at a time, but all at once, in a wave of small humiliations I'd never fully named out loud. I remembered my 9th birthday, the first one where I had invited friends from school instead of just family. I had begged my mom for a unicorn cake and a treasure hunt, and I wore my favorite pink dress with the tulip print. But Anne, who was 6 and already something of a performer, had convinced our parents to let her do a show for my guests. She put on one of my dad's old button-downs, wrapped a scarf around her waist like a sash, and pretended to be a pirate for 45 minutes straight, turning my entire party into her one-girl theater. My classmates talked about her for weeks. I was the sister of the funny one. There was my high school graduation, where I had finally made honor roll after years of struggling in math. I gave a small speech at the ceremony, something heartfelt about perseverance and gratitude, and I remember catching my dad's eye and feeling like maybe, just maybe, I was the daughter they were proud of. But at the restaurant afterward, Anne announced she had been cast as Juliet in her college's summer Shakespeare festival. All eyes turned to her, and just like that, my moment dimmed. She wasn't malicious about it. Not then. Not exactly. She just had this way of being louder, brighter, more urgent. And I let her. Every single time. Even my engagement party, the one I threw myself, by the way, because my ex's family thought hosting was too much work, somehow became her stage. She showed up in a white dress. Not cream. Not off-white. White. When I confronted her later, she said, "Well, it's not like you're getting married today." I let it go because I didn't want to cause drama. That was always the thing with, and if you pushed back, you were being dramatic or jealous or too sensitive. If you didn't, you were being gracious. I got very good at being gracious. But lately, there had been something sharper about her comments, like she had stopped pretending to be unaware and had begun leaning into it, poking me with little barbs hidden in smiles. Last Christmas, she gave me a gift card to a starter yoga class with a note that said, "Figured this would help with the back pain you mentioned." Or was that your niece? At Easter, she brought a salad with no dressing and loudly asked if I was still doing the no-oil thing. I had never done the no-oil thing. And yet somehow, she made me feel like I had to defend myself at my own dinner table. But the final straw wasn't the confetti, even though that was the loudest part. No, it was what she whispered to me in the kitchen while people were taking photos with the balloon letters that spelled out boy oh boy. She leaned in with that syrupy voice she used when she wanted to seem casual and conspiratorial, and she said, "I booked Sandalwood Bay for our honeymoon." Can you imagine? That was it. That was the thing that turned the murky water inside me into a flood. Because Sandalwood Bay wasn't just any destination. It was mine. It was the place I'd talked about endlessly after I stumbled on a travel article years ago. The white sand beaches, the private bungalows, the way the ocean looked so still it was like walking into a painting. I used to joke, half serious, that if I ever found someone worth marrying again, that's where I'd go. I'd shown her pictures. I'd even made a Pinterest board for it, which she followed. And now, without irony, she had said it like it was her own discovery. She didn't ask. She didn't say, "Hey, didn't you always talk about that place?" She just claimed it. As if the years of me dreaming about it were just background noise in her life. barely worth remembering. I stood there in the kitchen, watching her pour herself a second glass of sparkling cider, smiling like she'd earned every inch of that moment. And I felt something settle in me, not rage, not sorrow, but something heavier. Final. Like a door clicking shut behind me. I knew, with a clarity that cut through everything else, that I was done letting her rewrite the story while I held the pen. That night, when I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, took out my phone, and opened my browser. I typed in Sandalwood Bay, then added the word availability. I didn't know what I was going to find. I didn't know what flights would cost or if I could even take time off from work. But I knew I had to look. I had to see what it would feel like to take something back. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't going to stop there. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I finally gave up pretending I could sleep, lying flat in my bed while the ceiling fan spun like a lazy clock above me, each rotation slicing the silence into heavier pieces. My body was still, but my mind was running like an engine with no brakes, replaying her voice on loop. I booked Sandalwood Bay for our honeymoon. Can you imagine? Every syllable was soaked in that fake innocence she wore like lip gloss, sweet and shiny, but never meant to last long under scrutiny. I slid out from under the covers and padded barefoot across the cold hardwood floor, reaching for my laptop like it was a weapon I had finally remembered how to wield. The glow from the screen cast long shadows on the walls, and I sat cross-legged in a sweatshirt and pajama shorts that smelled faintly of lavender detergent and leftover resentment. My fingers moved fast, fueled by something that wasn't quite rage, but definitely wasn't peace either, more like a deep, long-held need to not lose again. I typed Sandalwood Bay into the search bar and hit enter. There was the same resort from all those years of daydreams, the one with the infinity pool that blended seamlessly into the ocean, and those little huts that had their own private hammocks suspended between palm trees. I clicked through the photos like a woman possessed. There was a section titled Romantic Escapes, and right at the top of the list sat Villa Azul, oceanfront, private chef, rainfall shower, and a bed that looked like it had been pulled from a fantasy. I checked the dates. I didn't even know her honeymoon schedule for sure, but I had overheard her say right after the wedding in mid-June, so I picked dates that lined up perfectly. June 15th through June 27th. 12 nights, almost 2 weeks, I thought at the time, though now that I really consider it, maybe my math was off. Either way, it felt long enough to make a statement, and honestly, the longer I stayed, the more pointed it would be. The suite was available. Double the price of the regular rooms. No cancellation option. I hovered my cursor over the Book Now button and stared at it for a full minute. My heart pounded the way it used to before taking a risk, the kind where, if you lost big. But if you won, you carved out a victory no one could touch. I clicked. It hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. Seeing that much money vanish from my savings, money I had technically been setting aside for emergencies or the future, made my stomach twist. But something about it felt good too, not petty, not impulsive, just necessary. Like I was finally giving myself permission to take up space in the story she always assumed belonged to her. I didn't sleep after that. I stayed up planning every detail, airport transfers, spa appointments, excursions I knew she had probably penciled into her own travel itinerary. I didn't care. Let her wonder how I got there first. Let her stew in the realization that maybe, just maybe, the world didn't revolve around her pregnancy timeline and her curated announcements. The next morning, I posted a photo to my story. It wasn't from Sandalwood Bay yet, obviously, but it was from their website, one of those perfectly edited shots of the sun rising over the water. I added a caption in white cursive font, just subtle enough to seem innocent if you didn't know the backstory. Not all dreams wait. Happy to be first. It took her less than an hour to respond. First came the text. Just 3 words, all caps. Are you serious? Then the group chat lit up. And sent a screenshot of my story and wrote, so, just woke up to this. Anyone want to explain how my sister is posting about the place Rob and I are supposed to honeymoon at? My mother replied within seconds, something dramatic like, "Please tell me this is a mistake. I can't take this kind of stress right now." Then came our brother Jake, always neutral, always trying to play peacemaker, with a comment that struck me like a gut punch. "WTF is wrong with you, Liv?" I stared at his message for a long time. Long enough for the screen to dim and then go dark. But I didn't reply. I didn't flinch either. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one who had to explain herself. I didn't feel like the one ruining something sacred, or stepping over someone's moment, or being too much. They didn't know the history. They didn't see the full map, the long trail of discarded birthdays, overshadowed achievements, quiet insults dressed as concern, and unspoken expectations that I would always step aside with grace. So no, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. I sat at my kitchen table, eating the last piece of birthday cake straight from the container when my phone rang. I expected it to be and ready to unload a full-blown tantrum. But it wasn't her. It was Rob. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. His voice was low, serious, not angry, and definitely not what I expected. "I need to talk to you," he said. "And not to fight. There's something you need to know." My stomach dropped. Not from fear. From the sudden understanding that this wasn't over, not even close. Because whatever he was about to tell me, it wasn't going to make things cleaner. It was going to make them worse. The silence on the other end of the line stretched longer than I was comfortable with, the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, but seems to press in against your ribcage, making you wonder whether you were wrong to pick up the phone in the first place. I'd answered with my usual guarded, "Hello?" But Rob hadn't responded right away. Instead, there was this awkward inhale, like he was trying to decide how much he could say without stepping on a landmine. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than usual, almost a whisper, like he was hiding in a bathroom or locked in a car somewhere with the windows rolled up tight. "Liv," he said, "I know I shouldn't be calling you, but what just happened, it's gotten out of control, and I just can't keep pretending anymore." At first, I thought he was going to ask me to cancel the trip or apologize and to smooth things over for the sake of family harmony or whatever version of peace everyone always expected me to preserve. But then he said something that made my fingers go cold around the phone. "She knew," he said. "About Sandalwood Bay. She absolutely knew." I didn't respond. I couldn't, not right away. I just stood there in my kitchen, barefoot and suddenly too aware of how quiet the room had become. I think I even stopped breathing for a second. Rob kept talking, maybe because he was afraid I'd hang up if there was another pause. "I overheard you talking about it with your friend Tara a few months back at that barbecue at your mom's," he said. "You said it was your dream trip, that you'd wanted to go for years, that if you ever found someone who really got you, that's where you'd want to disappear with them." I remembered that conversation vividly, and I remembered and being inside at the time, pretending to help in the kitchen, but absolutely within earshot. I hadn't even considered that she might have been listening then, or worse, storing it away for later, like ammo. "She brought it up a week after that," Rob continued. "Said she found this incredible resort and wanted to book it before it sold out. When I asked if it was the same place you talked about, she just smiled and said, 'She'll never go. She's all talk. Plus, I'm pregnant, people will be thrilled for us either way.'" He stopped there, waiting for me to say something, anything. I didn't. Because what was I supposed to say? That I was surprised? I wasn't. That I was hurt? I'd moved past that, or at least I thought I had. What I felt now was more complicated, something between vindication and something that felt too ugly to name. "She said that?" I asked finally, my voice dry as sandpaper. "Exactly like that," he said, without hesitation. "And for the record, I didn't even want a big honeymoon. I just wanted to get away for a few days, somewhere quiet, somewhere close." But she insisted. She wanted the beach. She wanted the photo ops. She wanted it to feel like a win. The word hit me like a slap. A win. That's what it had become for Anne, hadn't it? Not a celebration of love or a moment to rest and reflect before entering a new chapter of life. It was a move in a game she didn't even tell me we were playing, a way to claim the upper hand, to twist something I'd once loved into her latest stage prop. I sat down at the kitchen table, the weight of it all pressing into my shoulders, and for a brief moment, I actually felt sorry for her. Not the performative kind of pity people toss around when they feel superior, but a deeper kind of sorrow, the kind you feel when you realize someone you used to admire has built their whole life on competition, and can't tell the difference between love and applause anymore. "I'm not calling to defend her," Rob said, as if sensing the shift in my silence. "I just wanted you to know. You're not crazy. You didn't overreact." She crossed a line, and I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. The apology hung in the air between us like smoke after a fire, a little too late, a little too thin. But I appreciated it, in a way I hadn't expected to. At least someone finally saw it for what it was. When we ended the call, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just felt tired of the years I spent folding myself into something smaller so she could shine brighter, tired of pretending that being the bigger person wasn't just code for the quieter one. I walked outside, into the thick dusk air, and watched the sky change from orange to gray as the first stars peeked through. I thought about what Rob had said, about how he didn't even want the honeymoon, how he'd said yes to keep the peace, how and had turned something sacred into a symbol. And then, just as I was about to put my phone on silent and shut the world out for the night, it buzzed in my hand. A notification. Instagram. It was N. She'd posted a photo, black and white, filtered within an inch of its life. An ultrasound. Her caption read like a funeral eulogy, and a warning shot rolled into one long, meandering paragraph. Sometimes people take your moments, your memories, your plans. They hijack your joy and call it justice, but they can't take your heart. They can't take what's real. And this little heartbeat right here, this is real. The likes were rolling in. So were the comments. Little hearts. So precious. You're glowing. You're stronger than most people know. And all I could think was, she's not even pretending anymore. She'd turned it into a performance. Again. And I couldn't help but wonder, as I stared at that grainy little image on her screen, if I was becoming her, or if I always had a little of her in me to begin with. Sandalwood Bay was exactly as I had imagined it, the kind of place you don't just visit, but tuck into your dreams for years, saving it like a photo torn from a magazine or a song you only play on good days. The air smelled of sea salt and orange blossoms, and every corner of the resort had this manufactured serenity to it, like someone had walked through the entire place and deliberately removed anything that could ruin a mood. The sand was white and warm underfoot, the waves moved with lazy confidence, and the sky felt like it had been painted just for me. But peace isn't always about what surrounds you. Sometimes, even in the most beautiful place in the world, the inside of your mind refuses to quiet down. I couldn't sleep. Every night, no matter how many glasses of local wine I drank or how deeply the spa massage pressed into my shoulders, I'd lie awake staring at the curved ceiling fan above the bed, listening to the soft hum of the ocean just beyond the patio doors. My body was in paradise, but my brain kept dragging me back to a dozen memories I had buried like bad secrets. I wasn't just remembering what had happened, I was remembering how it felt, and how often I'd brushed it off, told myself it didn't matter, that it wasn't worth the fight. I remembered being 13, standing in front of the mirror in the hallway before my first school dance, wearing a blue dress I'd saved for with babysitting money, and had told me it made my arms look thick, and I'd believed her. I hadn't danced at the party, convinced everyone was staring at my elbows. I remembered the time I got my first job offer out of college, the one that meant I could finally move out, and had congratulated me by saying, "I didn't think you'd land that one, honestly. They must have liked your handwriting." She'd laugh like it was a joke, and I'd laugh too, because what else do you do? The digs were always quiet, never loud enough to be called cruelty outright. That was her gift, being able to stab with such precision that you didn't even bleed right away. And now here I was, lying in a king-sized bed with crisp white sheets, trying to decide whether revenge had tasted as good as I hoped. The answer surprised me. It hadn't. On the third evening, just before the sun dipped below the water in that slow, cinematic way that photographers live for, I walked barefoot across the beach and took a picture of the horizon. The colors were impossibly soft, pink, gold, and that lightest blue right before the darkness takes hold. It looked exactly like the desktop wallpaper I had saved in college and stared at during finals when I needed to believe life could look like something else. I pulled up her contact. I stared at her name for a long time. Then I attached the photo and typed one single sentence. "This was never about you. But you made it about me." I hit send. Then I blocked her. Not out of spite, and not out of fear of her reaction. I blocked her because I realized I didn't want to see what she would say next, the deflection, the self-pity, the twist that would somehow turn her into the victim. I wanted silence. I needed it. I cut my trip short the next morning. I left the suite just as the cleaning crew was arriving to make it ready for the next couple, some pair with sun-kissed smiles and matching luggage. No doubt ready to drink overpriced cocktails by the pool and take sunset selfies without knowing the quiet war that had played out there just a few nights before. Back home, the air felt heavier. It was still spring, but the breeze had that restless edge to it, like the season hadn't quite figured out what it wanted to be yet. I stopped by a boutique on my way from the airport, a little store that sold organic cotton baby clothes, the kind with soft colors and wooden buttons. I picked out a cream-colored onesie with little moon phases on the chest, wrapped it in brown tissue paper, and tied it with a piece of jute string. No card. No note. No explanation. I drove to her house, pulled into the driveway, and left the package on her porch. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't check if she was home. I just left it there like a peace offering or a closing statement, depending on how she wanted to receive it. Then I left. I didn't look back. I didn't check the group chat. I didn't tell anyone I was home. Sometimes, you don't need to win the fight. Sometimes, walking away, truly walking away without announcing it, without looking for witnesses, leaves the deepest scar. Because it means you no longer care if the other person ever admits they were wrong. You've stopped needing it. It's been a week now. She still hasn't spoken to me. I still don't regret what I did. But late at night, when everything's quiet and the hum of the fridge is the only sound in my apartment, I do wonder. I wonder what kind of aunt I'll be to a child whose mother never learned how to share.